Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just waiting for more folks to come in. While we're doing that, we're going to have some music for you all. So if you want to have some bio break before we start this amazing webinar, well, really talk story, kwentuhan style, please do so. In the meantime, we're going to have some song for you guys. This is I'm Rising song, written by Joy Barrios and sang by Monique Wilson. Yeah, and we'll start in a few minutes. Thank you.
I am rising for every woman I love, all my sisters who know of the pain that stays and lingers after wounds have healed and the scars don't show. I am rising, we are rising in every corner of the earth. 1 billion people rising, and our voice will be heard. I am rising for every woman on earth who cries herself to sleep, who thinks she's been forgotten in the darkness where she weeps. My nights are not of slumber, for my sister's heart I hear. So I ask the wind to bring her a promise of a world without any fear. I am rising, we are rising in every corner of the earth. 1 billion people rising, and our voice will be heard. So clap your hands and stomp your feet, break the silence here so long. We are rising, we are dancing, beat the drums and sing our song. Beat the drums and hear our song. I am rising, we are rising in every corner of the earth. 1 billion people rising, and our voice will be heard. I am rising, we are rising in every corner of the earth. 1 billion people rising, and our voice will be heard. I am rising for every woman I love, all my sisters who know of the pain that stays and lingers after wounds have healed and the scars don't show. I am rising, we are rising in every corner of the earth.
Are they gonna sing? All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Filipinas Rising in Turbulent Times. Today and every day, we're celebrating women and their contribution to our history, our society, not just this month, but every day. But of course, we also want to acknowledge today. This month is the celebration of Women's History Month. With the current times, more than ever, it's important that we continue sharing our community stories, our leader stories, women, youth stories in terms of our contribution here in the United States, but also all over the world. And we're really excited to have this event. My name is Sanjoko Kabande, and personally, this has been an event that we've been wanting to do for a very long time, so we're really excited to finally be able to pull this off. Hybrid style, as we have you all on Zoom, we also have folks in our at the Bayanihan Community Center here in San Francisco. So welcome to the event. Just wanted to give a little bit background of the host of the event, which is SOMCAN. Again, it stands for South of Market Community Action Network. We were founded in 2000, started off here in the heart of the South of Market in San Francisco. But as we grew our services and our work is across San Francisco, is citywide. We're a multi-issue, multi-strategy organization, organizing, advocating, and also having fun with our community, right? Doing Zumba, education, fighting for language access, and so many more to make sure that we are heard and we're on the table in the local and state level. We're represented in the policies, and our issues are there. I'm really excited to have this event hosted with us with the Amado Kaya Initiative. I'll have our moderator talk more about Amado. I do want to thank salamat to our co-sponsors, PNDA, Philippine National Day Association, and the FONS SF chapter, who I know are online. So we thank you for supporting this event. Before we go to all of the amazing speakers that you see on your screen, we're so blessed to have Ann Lim from Doble Bara and to sing, and Kuya Edwin Herrera on the guitar to sing Babae for you. So I'm gonna pass it to Ann to share more about the song and the background of it. Thank you.
Salamat, Angelica. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat, sa mga nandito sa Bayanihan at sa mga nasa Zoom. Ako po si Ann, kasama ko si Edwin. Ang kakantahin namin ay isang kantang isinulat ni Mona Aiko at pinopularize ni Inang Laya. Ang pamagat nito ay Babae. Kayo ba ang mga Maria Clara, mga huli at mga sisa, na di marunong na lumaban, kaapihay bakit iniluluha? Mga babae, kayo ba'y sadyang mahina? na lalaki ang tanging pag-asa. Kayo nga ba ang mga nena na hanap buhay ay pagtutuka? Mga babae, kayo ba'y sadyang pangkaman? Ang ating isip ay buksan at lipunay pag-aralan. Paano nahubog inyong isipan at tanggapin kayo'y mga libangan? Mga babae, ito nga ba'y kapalaran? Bakit ba mayroong mga Gabriela, mga Teresa at tandang Sora na di umasa sa luhat awa? Sila'y nagsipag hawak ng sandata, nakilaban ang mithiin ay lumaya. Bakit ba mayroong mga Lisa, mga Lilyosa at mga Lorena na di natakot makibaka at ngayon marami ng kasama? Mga babae, ang mithiin ay lumaya. Mga babae, ang mithiin ay lumaya. Salamat po.
Salamat, Ann and Kuya Edwin. So I'm gonna pass it next to my to your moderator. Um, oops. I've been organizing with this person for a very long time. She's one of my Pinay sister, but also an inspiration to me. Really excited to be doing this event with you, but it's really not just an event. It's a very inspiring day for me. Wanted to uh, call on Dr. Robin Magalit Rodriguez, who is an educator, community organizer, small farmer, and mother, and a big sister to a lot of us. So just want to pass the mic to Dr. Robin Rodriguez.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Just, I feel so much right now. That song, I remember listening to that song for the very first time when I was in college. So, for folks who don't understand Tagalog, we will definitely share out the lyrics and translations after the event because it's so truly powerful. It probably is what set me on, among the many different things that had to come together to set me on the path that I took. That was one of them, is that song. And particularly the work of Gabriela Silang, the revolutionary, but also Gabriela, the organization in the Philippines. For those of you who don't already know me, I think most people know me in my role as the Professor Emeritus of Asian American Studies at UC Davis. While I was there, I did found the Bulosan Center for Philippine Studies. Of course, I didn't do that alone. I did that with the community, but decided to retire early and continue the work of the center through the Amaro Kaya initiative, which is named after my late son, my eldest son, Amaro Kaya Cannon Rodriguez, who died while serving indigenous communities in the Philippines at 22. So AKI really tries to continue his legacy and all the work he did. I mean, my son really just did so much in his short but very meaningful life. And among the things we do is also carry on many of the core programs we started with the community in the Bulasan Center. But I am just so pleased to be what AKI is partnering with SOMCAN. As Angelica said, we have been organizing together for a very long time. I remember probably meeting Angelica on the streets of San Francisco during the anti-war mobilizations in the early 2000s and got the wonderful privilege to work alongside her. This is a dream, I think, for both of us to gather, honestly, over 50 years of 50 years, over 50 years of amazing Pinay power, Pinays who have risen in so many turbulent times. I think that many of us have been very, 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 it's like whiplash, just kind of watching all the things happening that kind of being thrown at us by the Trump administration. Many of us feeling maybe uncertain, afraid, um, if not also agitated and ready to take on work. But I think what's really amazing is that we have a wonderful legacy of Filipinas who have risen up in times that are similar to the times we're experiencing now, times maybe arguably even more challenging than the times we face now. So excited to be able to be part of this conversation and moderating today. And I want to go ahead and pass it on without further ado to our very first speaker, Cynthia Bonta. Cynthia Bonta is many, many things in our community. Um, she has played a role in founding numerous organizations, influencing many organizations, mentoring many of us, probably known best for her role as the mother of our Attorney General, Rob Bonta. But she is an amazing organizer who really had her start working alongside farm workers when after she immigrated to the United States, working along farm workers along with her entire family, volunteering with the UFW. Particularly the UFW boycott in LA. And so she's going to be sharing more about her work with a focus on farm workers, but also looking at kind of other lessons that we can draw from our history of activism. So I'll pass it on to you, Tita Cynthia Bonta.
Good evening, everyone. I really need to thank our hosts and organizers for lifting women during this Women's Month. We are encouraged by the mass demonstrations and coming out on the streets of working women. We may actually look to them to lead us in these times when we have to have our voices heard. So thank you for lifting up Pinay Power, working women and all of us. Yes, I feel that my experience with the farm worker movement has been a very radicalizing experience and has shaped me, as history tends to shape all of us. I came in 1965 to do graduate school in Berkeley, Pacific School of Religion. And it happens to be the same year that the Delano grape strike started, also in 1965. I came in June, July, around there, and the strike started in September. So when I heard about it, being part of the social justice committee of our seminary, I definitely wanted to take a check. I wanted to go there. I didn't realize that Filipinos were being treated so badly here in America. So having come so new from the Philippines, not knowing much about Filipino-American history and experience here, you can just imagine how shocked I was to hear that they had bad working conditions and were not paid enough. And now they have to strike to get their bosses to listen to them and notice them. So whenever I had a break during Christmas vacation, especially, I would go volunteer in Delano with a strike. That was where I met Larry Itliong. He was in his 60s by then. And he was always very gentle with the Filipinos. Manongs were already getting old and were pretty anxious about how long the strike would be and can they survive the strike. That was in the early stages when very few people were providing donations, in food and clothing and other things. So I can imagine how worried they were. But of course, Larry It Leong was very attentive to them and understood what they felt and encouraged them and always gave them hope. So I began to see the kind of a person he was, very Filipino, very caring, and really wanted, very focused in what he wanted to accomplish. Of course, the strike was not something that just happened. It was well thought out and well planned. He had to, this was something that people said was impossible to do, to unionize agricultural workers, because they were transient. They were never staying in one place for enough time to get them organized. But he really persevered. And it took like a lot of talking to individual farm workers one by one. And it took a long time until he felt that this was a time that they could strike and really capture the moment. So of course they had already felt or experienced some victory in Coachella when they were able to win their strike. So they moved on to the north and decided to strike. Of course, we all know that the police were tools of the growers in brutally threatening the strike so that it would stop. But then, of course, we all know that Cesar Chavez was invited and soon he joined. I believe that I was helped to understand the world when I watched Larry It Leong. He knew, he was really conscious about seeing that this is really a strike against capitalism as well, and knew very well that a strike and a boycott would be very effective. And so through that, he actually built a movement that was not just national, where communities, families, individuals became part of the boycott. And it also spread throughout the US and outside the US, because they had to make sure that the growers had to make sure that if they couldn't sell their grapes here, they would have to then export them. But the boycott followed where the produce went. And we all know that it became an international boycott movement that won the Filipino and Mexican strikers, farm workers, their union after 5 years, the United Farm Workers of America. So, even if it's been a long time ago, Larry It Leong continues to teach us and teach me personally. We know that we are able to, like Rob Bonta, when he was an assembly member, did pass his actually two bills his very first one, when he was first entering the assembly, that was AB 123, where he made it a law for the story and the role of Filipinos in the farm worker movement be taught in public schools, so that there is curriculum now for 9th and 11th grades, and it's being taught. And then the very first bill again that he passed the second time, his second term, was AB 7, which was to declare October 25 Larry Itliong Day throughout the state. And of course, this is not a state holiday yet, not like Cesar Chavez. But really, for the Filipino community, doesn't really matter, because they will observe Larry Itliong Day whether there's a resolution by the governor or not. And that, I think, would be called a movement now too, because it doesn't take any kind of action from anyone to let everyone know that it's time to celebrate Larry Itliong. People just do it on their own, and people, it seems to be spreading all over the country, and even to the Philippines. I am so happy to say that Silliman University in Dumaguete City, where I grew up, did have their first Larry Itliong Day just this February, and I was there along with some other Filipinos. And we had a chance to visit San Nicolas, Pangasinan, the birthplace of Larry Itliong. And to our surprise, when we went to see the mayor and talked to her about recognizing Larry and maybe building a monument in his honor there, that they actually had their first Larry Itliong Day last year, 2024. And the person responsible for telling them about it was Eliseo Silva. And actually, they are even already thinking about a monument without our even suggesting it. So this is very happy news, and it may be an opportunity for Filipinos born in the Philippines and Philams born in the United States to be able to dialogue much more closely, because really no one knows who Larry Itliong is in the Philippines, and very few people in the Philippines also know what Filipinos have gone through in the States. So I think there has to be some dialogue. And of course, we know that we're probably aware that in our times of fascism now in the United States, Maria Ressa is being interviewed a lot because she wrote this book on how to stand up to a dictator, and also because she got the Peace Nobel Prize for having stood up against Rodrigo Duterte when Rappler, her newspaper, got attacked. So I wanted to just briefly say that there's a lot in our history that should really encourage us to rise up, because what is things are possible when it's already been done. So when we look to our even our Filipino history, film history, and also our American history, we should be encouraged to do that. So I know that a lot of us know our film history, so I just wanted to quickly bring up some of the things in the US that have been done that should encourage us to be able to organize and work together, be united to do something about what we are facing now, which is fascism. So, for instance, we thought that ending slavery and child labor was impossible, but we did it. Unionizing workers thought were impossible, but we did it. We gained control of women's bodies. We were able to establish Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and clean air and water standards. We were able to also bring about other, it just shows that we can bring about universal health care, maybe a living wage, and high standards of education. We, of course, also established Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Well, thank you
And
so
so
much, Tita Sute. I hate
we
to
can do it.
interrupt this
Yes.
list because you're absolutely right. We can do it, and we'll have more opportunities to hear from the other panelists, and we'll be able to discuss more in the Q&A. But thank you so much for reminding us about the importance of this history, really foregrounding the ways that the struggle, the farm worker struggle, continues to have impacts long after Larry Itliong has passed, and that he continues to serve as an inspiration. So thank you again, and we'll see you again at the Q&A. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to now bring
Happy
up,
to be here.
thank you, Lillian Galedo. So I think we're going to go ahead and pull up Lillian's bio, but I do have to say, that I mentioned at the very beginning that that song was one of the things that was among the things that really inspired me as a college student. But I think when it comes to a mentor who really was directly shaped my trajectory, it would be Lillian Galedo and the programs out of the Filipinos, what used to be the Filipinos for Affirmative Action. I was really, really, really fortunate to be among the first cohorts of young people in Union City to be able to participate in programming offered by the FAA. Super important in shaping my identity as a Filipino American, and also shaping my interest in Filipino American history. I don't think I see Lillian's bio shown. I don't know if somebody in the back end from SOMCAN might be able to
Sorry,
just.
we're doing it right now.
No, thank you. Share Lillian's bio. I think I shared a little bit, but and I can kind of just share anyhow. Lillian is best known for all of her contributions in the immigrant rights movement and immigrant justice, particularly for Filipino immigrants. Through her work in FAA, what eventually became FAJ, or the Filipino Advocates for Justice, and numerous coalitions that she has helped to lead and form, not just around Filipino immigrant rights, but immigrant rights more broadly. So hopefully the bio comes on, and we'll certainly share the slide deck with everybody who's registered. But I want to go ahead and just, if you're okay with it, pass it on to you, Lillian, so that you can share all of your insights as somebody who's been at the forefront of immigrant justice for Filipinos.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. We were asked to speak about our own journey in terms of our identification as organizers and activists in celebration of International Women's Day. And, you know, I'm like 77 years old now. So that's a lot of time. And I think I'm going to be zooming through a lot of important issues and political challenges that basically shaped me, so that by the time I actually started working at Filipinos for affirmative action in 1980. I identified myself as a revolutionary, but that's not how I started out. I was born and raised in Stockton, California, into a Filipino community that at the time was considered one of the largest in the United States. My dad was a farm worker. My mother sometimes worked in farm work, and we kids sometimes worked in farm work. So we came from a farm worker family, which was kind of typical of Filipinos on the West Coast at that particular time. And this was in the late 1940s after the end of World War II. My parents raised us in the traditional strict format of their own upbringing. We weren't allowed to do much. There wasn't much discussion about politics, although my father was probably a Roosevelt Democrat and voted that way and was very proud of the fact that he could vote. And, you know, this was, there were a lot of things that were beginning to happen that I was totally clueless about. With the availability of television, we could see on TV things like the assassination of President Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King, then Robert Kennedy, and the riots and the marches and whatnot that were going on in the late 50s, 60s. That was the unfolding of the civil rights movement at the time, but it didn't really impact me in a way that made me want to be an activist. It wasn't until I went off to college in 1968. Well, I went off to a four-year college. I went to 2 years of community college in Stockton. And 1968 was an explosive time politically, particularly on college campuses. I began to participate in attending marches and against the Vietnam War in particular. We were beginning at Davis to start ethnic studies as inspired by the Third World strikes that went on at SF State and then UC Berkeley. And being a participant in what would be labeled the identity movement at the time. And through our efforts to start an ethnic studies program, particularly an Asian American studies program, at Berkeley, they had us go back to our communities and find out what the issues were in our communities that really no one was knowledgeable about, wasn't covered in any of the press. And at the time in Stockton, the Filipino community, particularly among the Manongs and Manangs, were trying to get a low-income housing project built in the remnants of what used to be Manilatown, because HUD had basically leveled the area, and they felt that they were due to be able to build someplace where the Manongs could live. So there was a long struggle around that. As students, we went to try to chronicle what that was, the racism that they confronted in terms of trying to get HUD money. And it was very eye-opening in terms of the need for affordable housing and the issues that immigrants and especially the elderly were up against, where there were no solutions being offered by the local powers that be. But that was one of many, many, many things that were going on. As was mentioned, the United Farm Workers was being organized. Even though I came from a farm worker family, we didn't necessarily think that was going to be successful in a way, because my father knew of past efforts that had been squashed. And the Vietnam War was raging. Initially, as someone who came from a town where a lot of the young people from my high school, the young men especially, were drafted into the Vietnam War, I looked at it uncritically, not thinking about whether or not we should be there, but our need to support our friends and my boyfriend and things like that who were being drafted to be in that war. And at UC Davis, I brushed shoulders with people at the I Hotel, and went on excursions through Asian American Studies to the United Farm Workers, particularly the Agbayani village that was being built. And so all of these things were things that I was able to participate in. There was conscious efforts on the part of the leaders of those different movements and projects to do education with people, to help us understand what the context was for the various different explosions of organizing that was going on. And then, of course, Watergate happened, so that it was clear of the kind of corruption that there existed at the highest level of government here in the United States. One thing that I thought was very important in the Filipino community were the Filipino People's Far West Conventions. I went to a few of them in 1975. I went to the one in Berkeley, and it was here that I was introduced to the KDP. Cynthia Bonta, we both volunteered to help form the Filipino Education Task Force. And the school books of the state were being reviewed, and they were asking for input from the community about what the curriculum should reflect. And we put together this whole presentation of Filipino American history. We went to the multiple meetings and presented our case in terms of how Filipinos should be included in the curriculum of the high schools. And of course, none of that happened. For decades later, the curriculum of the high school textbooks would be very much the same. And the idea that people in the community was just a fantasy. But who determined what was in the textbooks was the publishing company lobby. So, there were many bumps along the road as I was working my way through the 1970s. And in 1976, I had the fortune to be hired to work at Asian American Studies at UC Berkeley. And Asian American Studies at UC Berkeley was a hotbed of activity. The Asian left was very much involved in teaching classes and doing community projects. All the Asian nonprofits in Oakland stem from the volunteer work of students from UC Berkeley, because Asian American Studies was supposed to be for the community. It was supposed to enable young people to work in the community once they had their education. And, it was there that I learned a lot about what was going on internationally, the anti-colonialism that spun out after the end of World War II, which included, the Philippines. And by joining the KDP, I became active in the anti-martial law movement and basically learned what our history was in the Philippines and the role that the United States had played as our colonizer. But the KDP was also a place to become involved in the larger left that was hoping to form a left party in the United States based on Marxism-Leninism. And we attended study groups that helped us to understand the kind of historical development of capitalism and what it had done to suppress people power and people's ability to govern themselves and self-determination. By 1980, and I'm running out of time, I started working at Filipinos for Affirmative Action. And there I tried to put into practice some of these things that we were learning about through that historical period. We started a youth development program We did immigrant rights through multiple coalitions, not only about Filipino immigrants, but about bills that were hoping to legalize the undocumented, that was against the militarization of the border, that was against the enforcement measures that were being um, implemented as U.S. immigration policy throughout the United States, and to fight back in general against xenophobia. We formed the Immigrant Rights, Filipino American Civil Rights, what is it? FILCRA, Filipino Civil Rights Act. I think Robin remembers, which was to try to nationalize organizing in the progressive organizing in the Filipino community, and worked on such issues as the Filipino World War II veterans. And we began doing community organizing around the airport workers who lost their jobs after 9/11, who were falsely blamed for the terrorists getting on the airplanes. And then the home care workers, because as the Filipino community grew to be, over 4 million that we are today, many of the immigrants were working in home care. And all of the work that FAJ does is in collaboration not only with other Asian organizations, but with the broader social justice movement. I think one of the important things that we have done in most recent year was involving the Filipino community through civic engagement, to be involved in using our vote, to use it to promote progressive candidates, and to represent, to lift people who would represent not only the Filipino community, but the larger progressive community for social justice ends. And with my last few minutes, I want to kind of remind ourselves similarly that we have been through a lot of turmoil, even in my own lifetime, and that through organizing, we have prevailed. And it's not something that happens overnight. There were so many times where some issues we thought would not happen in my lifetime or our lifetime of our generation, and were surprised when many of those things were resolved. But in this current moment, where democracy is under threat, where a realignment is going on in the world in general, where U.S. capitalists are trying to assert themselves on areas where they can find resources to continue to advance what they think is the next big thing, like AI and crypto and space exploration, to the point that we're beginning to threaten other countries with forcibly annexing them and going to war with them if we have to. It's a time that we really have to resist, and we really have to join the larger social justice movement to push back. And we could start with pushing back on the people who are elected right now. The Democrats need to grow a spine, and there are a handful of Republicans that might be pressured to change the balance of forces in Congress.
Lillian, I think we're going to have to resume our conversation.
Some of these things we can talk about more, hopefully, in the Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, Lillian. It's so difficult to have to play this role as moderator and timekeeper, but we do hope, I know this is something that's Angelica at SOMCAN, myself at AKI, we're very, very committed to continuing these conversations. So I'm hoping that tonight will be the one of many that we will continue to have. But I want to go ahead and bring up our next speaker, Juanita Tamayo Lott. Juanita Tamayo Lott, and I think this is an important part of her biography, is actually a retired demographer, has also done poetry and has written in different kinds of ways and different kinds of outlets. But she really cut her activist teeth. And you can see obviously some that she's been involved as an activist until today. But her work began as a college student and as one of the people really part of the movements that brought about ethnic studies. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you, Juanita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Angelica, and everybody out there watching us. I'm really honored to be with this panel of my sisters because, you know, we have to continue our legacy of women warriors that started in the Philippines, came to the US, and now it's global. I was asked to talk about the strike at San Francisco State and the establishment of ethnic studies there. And it was the fight, you know, the fight for it, the struggles, and the eventual success to establish ethnic studies. And I'm supposed to tell you all this in about 14 minutes. But instead of that, I would like to recommend to you my book, Golden Children, Legacy of Ethnic Studies at SF State, because it starts from the beginning before the strike, and then it goes through 2016, 2018, 2019, when we had the 50th anniversary. That's why it's called Golden Children. And the book is published by East Wind Books of Berkeley. And the publisher is Harvey Dong, a good friend of all of us. Harvey was on strike at UC Berkeley when we were on strike at San Francisco State. So please, if you really want to know the story, read this. The other thing is I'd recommend to you a very award-winning documentary. It's called Agents of Change by filmmaker Abby Ginsburg. And what that story is about, it juxtaposes our strike at San Francisco State, which was at a public school, multiracial, urban, public university, versus what was happening at that same time at Cornell University, an elitist, East Coast, very white kind of organization. And basically, Blacks and Hispanics are interviewed, and I'm the only Filipina and the only Asian American that was interviewed in that. So it tells us that we still have a long ways to go. I have to tell you that I was very lucky to grow up in San Francisco in the 1950s in the neighborhood called Western Addition. When I was 3 years old, in my home that my mom and dad and my sister shared with our uncles, we could hear Ilocano, Tagalog, Visayan, Spanish. And when I went outside to play around the block in the Fillmore, I could hear my friends and their parents speaking Japanese, Chinese, French, Haitian, Russian, German, and Black English. And I felt I was very lucky to live in that kind of environment. And I thought that was how the whole world was, but I found out later that's not true. I was also very lucky that my father, Lázaro Lorenzo Tamayo, born in 1898, and my uncles, who were born shortly thereafter, had been taught in the Philippines by the men who had led the revolution against Spain. And then also my dad and my uncles, they were the Manom generation. They were World War II veterans, they were US citizens, and they were union members. And so my dad and uncles taught us, their children, my siblings and my cousins, that we were American. And it was our responsibility to be engaged citizens and also have a love for our motherland, the Philippines, because at that point, the Philippines had just become a nation unto itself. I share these two lessons with you because what happened when I went to San Francisco State is I learned that the leaders of the strike at San Francisco State and the founders of the School of Ethnic Studies had very similar experiences to me, so that we were able to organize based on mutual interest. And I think it's very important, particularly for the younger people, to know that the strike at San Francisco State, and there were several other demonstrations before that, was probably the most important one in U.S. history in terms of the length. It was 4 months long, and it was day in and day out. We were on the picket line every day, whether it rained or shined, and it was student-led. And it's and compared to the other universities that had demonstrations all over the United States and also in other countries, we were the only one which the student who's led it were people of color. We were the forefront of the Black Students Union and the Third World Liberation Front. The Third World Liberation Front consisted of several student organizations. They had the International Chinese Association. They had the Asian APA, which is the Japanese Association, PACE, the Filipino American Collegiate Endeavor, of where I was, MASC, which was the Chicano organization, La Raza, which was the Latino organization, and American Indians, Native Americans. And we were all there. And I want you to know that even though the Filipinos don't get a big emphasis when you look at the strike, you see the Blacks and you see the whites and you see the Latinos. It was really, I think, the central role of PACE leaders, people like Ron Kittichai, Patrick Salaver, Sonny Arnaido, Ed De La Cruz. And part of it is because they were not just Filipino, they were mestizo. They were German Filipino, they were Irish Filipino, they were Mexican Filipino, they were Black Filipino, they were American Indian Filipino. And I think that gave us a lot of strength. And also, a lot of us were, some of us were like 18 or 19, but some of the guys were older. They'd been through the military. They understood how to organize, from a military point of view, as also as union members. They understood union organizing. A lot of our dads were in the union, and they were on the march lines with us. And so basically, we had a really very special group that all coalesced. And our role was that the people of color in California in the 1960s, with the 1965 Immigration Act, were, we were growing. We were here to stay. We were going to be the permanent citizens of the United States. And so we needed to have our representation in higher education, and also making sure that the education we received was relevant education, not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant 16th century point of view, not a Eurocentric point of view. In fact, we really didn't fight for ethnic studies. We fought for third world studies, understanding the geopolitical relationships of the US to the rest of the world, where they used us for human capital and natural resources, and that continues today. And so we were strong for relevant education. And I think one of the reasons we succeeded was that we had 4 principles, or at least I think we had 4 principles. And one was that first, it was we the people. Just as the Constitution says, it's we the people. That means all of the people. All of the people. And that's why, we represented, when you look at the emblem of the strikers at San Francisco State, it's a fist, because, we're all different fingers, but together we're strong. That's what we show. That is we the people. And it wasn't just the people of color, but it was anybody that was marginalized, that had never gone to college, the people that were left out. And then, so our second principle was serve the people. That's a really important point because the California university system is a public system. That means taxpayers pay for it to educate our children so that they can become good citizens, they can be part of the labor force, and that they go out and serve the public. That is what public universities and colleges do. And then our third principle was that a people united can never be defeated. A people united can never be defeated. I'll tell you, we had a lot of arguments within the third world with the white folks, with people who were coming in. We had coalitions with labor, with coalitions with the religious groups, the media, the legal system, and people from around the world came and looked at San Francisco State as the pivotal point of student strikes. And we had to be able to manage all that, to listen to each other. And again, I think it was the Asian Americans who brought, and the Filipino Americans who brought the consensus. You know, you just keep talking and talking and talking until we can come to consensus. And then when that happens, we send out in the Central Committee of the Third World Liberation Front, we send out one spokesperson. And that spokesperson does not get rejected or conflicted with other points of view. Everybody says what they disagree with inside, but then when we went outside, we were a united front. And that's where I learned how to do coalitions, coalition building across the whole group. Because when I went to Washington, D.C. and my work in the Census Bureau, it's like I had to listen to every segment of the United States population. And so that was good grounding for me. And our fourth and last principle was failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. So what does that mean? That means when you say you're going to go do a movement, that you're going to go and make revolution, you better be sure that you are able to deal with the consequences. And one of the reasons I wrote The Golden Children is because of the unsung heroes and heroines who went on strike day in and day out, people who lost their jobs, people who went to jail, even got deported. And some people went to jail more than once. And some people were blackballed. A lot of professors couldn't even get jobs. And so there was a price to pay. There's always a price to pay when you are fighting for something that is important, that is critical, that has our moral integrity. And so given all this and given the situation as Lillian and Cynthia have described, I still feel very positive about ethnic studies, because we can't call it third world studies now, ethnic studies, because despite all the cuts, we not only survive, we thrive. We have we have ethnic studies from grammar school all the way to higher education, and a lot of the activists actually come out of it, of ethnic studies, Black studies, Chicano studies, Filipino American studies. So I'm very happy about all that. And now I'm based in Seattle. You may know that today what I'm doing now is I'm still working with young people to talk about immigration, to talk about ethnic studies, and also faith issues, that a lot of people are into their faith issues. And then also careers. And my last thing I want to say is that what I'm doing now is I'm a Lola. So in Seattle, I'm a Seattle raging granny. And our mission, as in the tradition of wise women elders, is to promote global peace, justice, and economic equality by raising public awareness through our songs and through our humor. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing and being here, Juanita. So inspiring. I am excited to now present our next speaker, Estella Habal. So, Estella, let's see, are you? Oh, we just need to get you on camera now. Oh, there you are. So, Estella Habal is professor emeritus at San Jose State University, and me, we taught very similarly in topics related to Asian American history, but also women's studies. But she was not just a scholar, was very much an activist as well, being a part of the Katipunan ng mga Demokratikong Pilipino, or KDP, but probably best known for her work around the I Hotel. Um, Dr. Estela Habal, as a scholar and activist, both participated in and was very active as part of the I Hotel struggle, and also it became a topic of study and an important book that really is the core of any Filipino American course. The San Francisco's I Hotel, Mobilizing the Filipino American Community book. And again, we'll share all of these resources and actually hope to have a mini course where we can really dive deeper into these topics in the future. But I want to go ahead and give it to you, Dr. Stella Habal.
You all for organizing this. Is really important. I think that women are a major part of the organizing that has been going on, and it hasn't always been highlighted. And so this is an important time to do that, especially in the Filipino community. I think that the women are pretty strong. And they do a lot of things, and they don't get a lot of credit, because what's usually out in the forefront are the guys, right? And this has kind of been the culture, for a long time. And so I think the young generation, people in SOMCAN and AKI are, trying to uplift, those stories that women have played. And it's really important to learn from the women, especially. So my presentation, I'm going to go through, how I became active, because a lot of times people think that, to be an activist is something that is, you become a heroine or a hero. And, I guess people need heroes, but I think what happens is that people come up to the challenge of what happens to them, and then they become involved. So how I got involved in this movement, social justice movement, was through the Filipino identity movement. It was the time when Black Power and Black liberation was going on, and Black was beautiful, Black was proud, etc. And I really thought about that when I was growing up. How come I'm Filipino and nobody knows who a Filipino is? How come I don't even know my own culture? How come I can't speak Tagalog, Bicolano, or whatever? Why didn't my parents teach me these things? And I think many of the young people are going through that kind of process right now, trying to figure that out, why that's so. And so from that need, I joined this group called SIPA in LA. And this was in the late 60s. And I was also going to college at Long Beach State. And that's where I was looking for my identity, and I didn't find it. And so I joined a Chicano group called MECHA, which is Mexican American Association group. And I learned about the colonialism and Spanish colonialism there, and identified with them, and got educated about the Mexican revolutionaries. And so I joined that group, but I'm still looking for a Filipino identity. So SEPA was the answer at the time. Okay, so I was then going through a divorce, and so I moved to San Francisco, and there I was then involved with a anti-imperialist film group, which was mainly white, and they were connected to SDS, which is the Students for Democratic Society, and we were in coalition with them, and we were part of the organizers of the Spring Mobilization, and that was 1972. And this was against the against the Vietnam War. And so I became an anti-war activist. And then I was pursuing still my Filipino identity. And so I learned about the KDP. I was recruited, by Cynthia Maglaya, someone many people might know her. And then I joined the KDP and became part of the anti-imperialist movement, U.S. imperialism in the Philippines. And from that, I then became totally involved in the KDP. And we were doing a lot of activities against martial law and many different kinds of events and organizing efforts. While I was in the KDP, I was then thrust into the international hotel struggle. I had known about it before in 1971 when SEPA became involved in a field trip there. And so I had known about it, but through the KDP, I became assigned to be part of the struggle. And I learned about the Manong generation, who the Filipinos who were there, and they were kind of, in some ways, alien to me because my parents, although my parents were, Manong and Manong of that same generation, they came from a totally different route. We came to the United States in 1951, and there were 6 children. And so my father was in the U.S. Army, and so we came here, and my mother, had to support us too. So she worked in the fishing canneries in San Pedro, where we landed after we arrived in San Francisco, and then we moved to San Pedro. And there, I learned later that was the organizing that happened with Larry Itliong in that same tuna factory. And so probably my mother was involved in that because although I never talked to her about it, she would always tell me never cross a picket line. Yeah, and it was really amazing to hear her and remember that, because now, after I saw that film, the play of Larry Itliong, they mentioned some of that going on with the tuna factories in San Pedro. So I grew up poor, working class background, but my identity was still important, and there was no other Filipinos in San Pedro that I knew of, so we didn't really have any much of a community there. So that's probably why I was searching for my Filipino identity, because a lot of youth today, they're growing up in multiracial communities or mainly white communities, and maybe they're the only Asian or Filipino, in those areas, especially in the Midwest. And so I joined that through the International Hotel, through the KDP. And while I was doing that, I was also a union member, organizer in AFSCME, which was American Federation of Service Employees, Municipal Employees, and did that for a little while. And the KDP, was kind of waning at the time in the 80s. And so I went back to school, got my BA, and got my PhD, and taught in various schools, and then landed a tenured job at San Jose State and became a professor there for about 14 years, and then I retired 10 years ago. So I'm 76 now, and still working at it. So in the 90s, what happened was that I went back into the International Hotel because a coalition developed to resume a new hotel. And so I worked on that with the Manilatown Heritage Foundation. And then also we developed the Manila Town Center. And that was kind of a struggle because we had to work with the HUD, the Housing for Urban Development. And they didn't really allow us to have anything there because it's a housing component. So anyway, through that struggle, the International Hotel, and then developing the new I Hotel and the Manila Town Center, you could say that my whole life actually was shaped by that struggle. And so I'm not sure if people need to know. I mean, I guess I could say that it was a 10-year battle against eviction, but they were eventually evicted in 1977. Also, probably people don't know that the Filipinos were in the forefront of the struggle, and it wasn't just the Manongs, it was also the youth. And so you could say it was an intergenerational struggle to oppose the eviction. And it happened when it first happened. It's kind of like it dovetails into what Lillian and Juanita was talking about. It was kind of a third world struggle, really, that was going on. Black people, minorities, and I could say that because of the Black liberation struggle, I think, on all fronts, we have a debt to pay in that sense, because they were the first, and then we were part of this third world struggle. So by 1968, that's when they first got eviction notices, and then the third world people, especially the Asians, served the community, and that was their way of serving the community and working this forefront. Okay, and so why that's kind of one piece of information that's tells you about this Manong generation that was in the International Hotel is that they were activists before in the 30s. They were also labor organizers. They were union people. And so they had already had struggles and knew about how to organizing. So, there was this charge, by the media that the young people had taken over. And that was really not true. It was a true generational struggle that was going on. And the KDP was part of that. And so basically it was human rights versus property rights. And that was like the very basic part of it. And you could say it now, it's part of social justice. And also you could say that we advocated for the rights of Filipinos, but it was for also other low-income people. And tenants' rights. So I think that's it. My time is up.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Habal. So many lessons, and hopefully we'll have more time to discuss them a little bit later. I mean, I've always loved Dr. Habal and the ways that you lift up the intergenerational piece, the importance of really working together across generations. So thank you for that. Our last panelist is Dr. Joy Barrios, who will be really talking about activism and rising up during turbulent times from the other side of the Pacific in our ancestral homeland. Many of the folks on the panel spoke to martial law in the Philippines and their involvement in anti-martial law organizing here in the U.S. And Joy will offer her account as somebody there in the homeland. Joy, I think we might have did Joy's bio pull up. Of course, Joy is a professor who is teaching at UC Berkeley, and prior to joining the faculty at UC Berkeley, had been teaching for many years at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I think if I'm not sure if the slide. Oh wait, I see.
Can
I
you
think
see
it's
the
kind of behind.
Can you see the
Yeah.
slides?
Yeah, I can see your slides. Yes, I think that's what
Okay.
I'm looking at right now.
Are we good?
I think we're good, although I wasn't able to give the fullness of your bio and we weren't able to see it, but I'll go ahead and take it away, Joy.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to say that I am in awe of my fellow speakers. So, thank you for inviting me. I am sometimes uncomfortable when asked to speak about martial law. I was never arrested, never tortured. Truthfully, I was simply a street theater performer, specifically a clown. But here is my story. So, 1972, oops, just give me a moment. 1972, I'm navigating. Martial law, obsessed with the true, the good, and the beautiful, then First Lady Imelda Marcos had a fondness for spectacle. Everything had to be grand. And this is Imelda. Her hairdo, buildings rising from the sea, parades, film festivals, and beauty pageants. In the same way that circuses had magic acts, clowns, and freak shows featuring the exploitation of the disabled, the deformed, and the exotic, the new society had its own tricks. Billions disappeared from the nation's coffers, clowns filled legislative positions, and politicians were seen as lapdogs. Lapdogs. Those who dissented were considered aberrations in the new order and thus had to be hidden away in military safe houses, incarcerated, or disappeared. Songs for the new society, such as Bagong Pagsilang, were played over and over on the radio. Taught to and sung by school children, and according to political prisoners, were constantly forced upon them to listen to while in detention. Other examples of cultural propaganda were as follows. Paintings of Imelda and Ferdinand as mythological creatures, malakas and maganda, or the strong and the beautiful. Films such as Iginuhit ng Tadhana, and here we have Iginuhit ng Tadhana, or Written in Destiny, and literature such as Ferdinand Marcos's An Epic and Imelda Marcos's a tonal epic. And here. These texts show how culture was used by the regime to paint a picture of an ideal society in spite of the reality of political repression. I was 10 years old at the time of Proclamation 1081, and after half a century, I remember only suspended classes, curfews, and in high school, citizens' army training, which meant studying how to march with a wooden gun. However, things changed in college at the University of the Philippines. And picture, I joined the UP Repertory Company, and in my sophomore year in 1980, I was cast as farmer number 2 in Bonifacio Ilagan's Pagsambang Bayan. Perhaps I was farmer 3 or 4 or 5. It didn't really matter. None of us had solo lines as we spoke as a chorus of farmers. But I do remember saying lines that told of how we produced food and yet were hungry. Written in the form of a mass, the play told of the dilemma of the church faced with the problems presented by peasants, workers, youth, and indigenous people. To this day, and let me show you another slide, I can still recite the play lines from the play and sing the songs. In hindsight, it was reciting those lines and singing the songs that made me understand and empathize with the characters and the people they represented. At around that time, students called for a rally in front of the Department of Education. And here is the slide. To protest the Education Act of 1980, which threatened to curtail academic freedom. I had never joined a rally outside the university, but I was not afraid because UP Rep arranged for us to go as a group. They formed a buddy system and told us we can ride the buses, which were probably arranged by the student council. Unlike most college students, I preferred floral dresses to t-shirts and jeans. It must have been all those 17 magazines I liked to read. And so I went to the rally in a dress, obviously not the best choice. Not long after the rally started, it rained. And soon after, there was a commotion because police officers had been ordered to disperse the rally using batons. I ran with the others and predictably fell because of my wedge sandals. Then somehow someone picked me up and dragged me into a building where many students had taken shelter. That was the day we learned about fascism. I don't remember how we got back to the university, but I do remember Chris Miliado meeting with the cast and crew of Dulaang UP's Twin Bill Plays. At that time, I was one of the lighting crew, proudly in charge of the spotlight, using my innovative pot holders. Chris was at the rally as well, and he urged us to join a new production that would be called Vaudeville, to be staged at the 10th Theater across from the UP Faculty Center. I did not perform in Vaudeville's first run. I had already joined Pagsambambayan. But I did play an important role. I took charge of refreshments. Although most of the food I brought came from leftovers from the other play, as I was chair of the refreshments committee of Pagsamba. Later, after Pagsamba finished its run, I alternated for a couple of insignificant roles in the play, as I had a poor singing voice, kawawa. I think I was Broken Shields, the magician's assistant, as we took on names that were patterned after Hollywood stars. From that play, we formed the organization UP Tropang Vaudeville, first chaired by Chris, and from 1982 to 93 by me. Many years later, Chris became artistic director of the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Later, the organization split up and we formed the new group Periante, first chaired by Ralph Peña, now artistic director of Mayi Theater Company in New York. And, just give me a moment. In New York. From 1980 to 1986, we became known as a street theater group. Of our performances, a few stand out. One was in 1981, and here we are. at the UP College of Arts and Letters, College of Arts and Sciences lobby, where we staged Ilocula at the oath-taking of newly elected Student Council President Lian Alejandro. The play was based on an article Lian had written entitled What Are We in Power For, published in the Philippine Collegian in 1980. I remember singing, We Are Family, and dancing the swing. Another memorable performance was in 1984 during the Lakbayan March, calling for the boycott of the Batasang Pambansa elections. Chris and I had signed up to join the 7-day march from Tarlac to Manila. We walked with the marchers, most of them farmers, for several hours a day, chanting as we marched, and stopped at the designated town, met by supporters. Rallies were held in the afternoon and cultural programs in the evening. We emptied the evening program, and we were joined by theater and music groups that were either local or from Metro Manila. It was in Malolos, Bulacan that our theater group Periante joined us to perform Ilocula 2. Chris had rewritten the play, and instead of focusing on the Marcos family, it now focused on cronies such as General Barreta for Cesar Virata and the twin monsters, Revolver for Fabian Ver and Barile for Juan Ponce Enrile. I wrote the songs for that play, the first songs I had written, as I did not think of myself as a writer at that time. And moving on, this is a Lakbayan March and Lakbayan March performance. Okay. We explored several theater forms. There was a Kilos Awit or movement song, which we performed during marches. We would go to sidewalks, sing the song Awiting Revolucionario from the 1940s, and then run to catch up with the march. There was the improvisational play as exemplified by FQS or First Quarter Storm on the student movement of the late 1960s and the early 1970s. We performed this play in Camp Bikutan for political prisoners, and they in turn performed guerrilla theater for us. Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed influenced a newspaper play which used the boxing form. But why can street plays like Ilocula be considered revolutionary? First, the play transformed Marcos from hero/president into a monster. He has a mysterious illness, later known to be lupus, because he had eaten the farmer's shoulders, the worker's arms, the intellectual's brains, etc. Second, street theater is performed outside usual performance venues. Let me explain. Martial law imposed the slogan, sa ikauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. For a country to prosper, we need discipline. On the street, we see signifiers of order, pedestrian lanes, traffic lights, no left turn. But street plays defy these markers of order. Actors sing and dance on the streets undisciplined by martial law. Thus, we performed resistance in both the content and form of the plays. To illustrate, the People's Oratorio, and here is People's Oratorio. And give me a moment. The People's Oratorio 1984 combined several street theater forms, improvisations, Aquilos Awit, puppets, and men dressed as ballerinas, while Ces Mangay Quesada did a parody of Imelda singing about the true, the good, and the beautiful. And yes, we sang Bagong Pagsilang as well, staged as a parody of the dreams, fantasies of an orderly society, with actors wearing Ferdinand and Imelda masks, joined by the unmasked Beth Torres, playing Aimee in a kabataang barangay t-shirt. I believe my martial law story is best told through songs and plays, those that were commissioned by the regime, those that we parodied, and those that we wrote and sang so that we can give voice to the sentiments of the oppressed, the incarcerated, and the victims of the fascist regime. There are details I cannot remember and perhaps moments I remember incorrectly. However, with the current administration's recent attempts to distort or erase history, the reframing of heroism by fascists like Enrile, and with former comrades using their memoirs to red tag those who have remained in the struggle, it is important for us not only to share what we remember, but also to interrogate memory making. I wrote about this in a poem on the performance of the carnivalesque, meaning inversion of social order, suspension of norms, freedom and laughter, to borrow from Mikhail Bakhtin during martial law. We were not, as the memoir underlined, invincible heroes, dodging whizzing bullets, grazing cheeks. We were simply clowns at a time of repression. 45 years later, many of my fellow theater artists are still active, and some of us, including myself, are with the Bagong Alyansang Makabayan or Bayan Tandang Sora network. We remember martial law with both humor and steadfast commitment to the national democratic movement. This poem is my response to the red tagging of my theater group in a book. Let us remain vigilant, principled, and organized, but let us also find joy in the struggle. There are no small roles or big roles. Resist all forms of oppression. Thank you. Here is a poem, if we have time. Not sure if we have time. I don't think we have time. Maybe later.
Yeah, I don't think we have time, but we can, if you can share it anyway, Joy. Again, we've been reminding everybody on the call. And of course, thank you so much for your presentation. I love the idea that there are no small roles. So important for all of us to be reminded of that. But as we've reminded everybody on the webinar, we will share resources. And if you're able to share the poem, um, we can share that as well as part of the resources that we put out there. So now if I can invite all of the panelists to come off camera and join together in a Q&A session. There's already been some great questions posted in our Q&A box, which basically, the questions that we hoped people would ask. And so I think to kind of combine the two questions, it seems like folks. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I was muted. I don't know how much you caught, but Joy, just please share the poem so we could share it out later. Or maybe that I accidentally muted it myself. But anyhow, thank you all panelists for your presentations. I think that what folks are wanting to hear from you is what kind of advice would you give to people who want to organize right now? So it seems like people kind of are interested in hearing about advice in terms of folks who are at the very beginnings of their activist journey. But it seems like people also want to know, how do you sustain activism? And all of you, of course, um, uh, you, all of you talk about starting as young people, and all of you continue to do the work. So tell us both, how do we start and how do we stay? Maybe if we can start with Tita Cynthia and then go from there. Just responses to how do you start organizing in this moment, and how do you sustain organizing over a lifetime? Some advice.
Well, um, I guess I should share with you what we're doing in the Central Valley right now. The Poplar Community Service District Board, who is kind of like the city council for a city, and for Poplar, it's not a city yet. They wanted to change the name of our park, our new park that we named after Naji Daifala, one of the young martyrs of the UFW, who is also is Yemeni. Well, when something like that comes up and you need to respond, you really need to organize. And the young people feel that their voice is being silenced. And it's like what's happening in the federal level is trickling down to the local, and that the board, who they suspect to be puppets of the growers there, are trying to shut off their civil rights. So they have to respond. They have to assert that they are not going to give an inch of their civil rights, their human rights, their democratic rights. So they're going to be prepared. They've said that they have no right to change it because it's the community that named it. And they have to represent the community as electeds. So they're organizing themselves now. So my answer, I guess, is when incident erupts and is you have to respond. And if it has something to do with shutting off your freedom of speech and self-determination, then you have to assert your rights.
Did you want to go answer next, Lillian, please? Oops, you need to unmute.
One of the things that Cynthia and I did recently was to do door knocking for the 2024 election. And, you know, what I am in awe of right now is the generation, God, I think they're like 2 generations after me, who have set up very viable infrastructure to engage voters. And we went to Nevada with under the auspices of Seed the Vote. They mobilized hundreds of people to do voter engagement and get out the vote in an attempt to block Trump's election for most of last year. And we fortunately were able to plug in Nevada. But there's also young people who have organized Bay Rising that is doing rapid response to all the various different insults that are coming from the Trump administration. And I think that we need to plug in to this infrastructure that has been developed for us. I don't think we need to duplicate it and organize it again. They have done a wonderful job, and I have a lot of faith in their leadership. I guess the other thing is that what I thought was useful in my own development during the 70s was to take advantage of educational opportunities that were organized by basically leftists to help you understand what is this political moment, what kind of changes are being made, are we how close are we to fascism? You know, in what way is the United States planning to really be an imperialist power, you know, in the next, the next period? And I think that we need to prepare ourselves for that because with every single day, it looks like we're moving closer and closer or further and further into that realm. And we need to be able to resist that as well.
I think there are a couple of other resources. And one, because all politics is local, is that people really have to get to their representatives in the House and in the Senate at the municipal, state, and national level to tell them, you know, we're paying your salaries. What are you doing for us? And use their resources. And I think another thing that's building up now, and it started on Ash Wednesday, is that the civil rights movement is gearing up again with Bishop William Barber in North Carolina, who's also head of the Poor People's Campaign. There's a lot of instruction about nonviolence and the idea of being able to look at things from a big picture. So what I'm saying is that start locally with the people that you know, but make sure that you understand that we're part of a bigger movement. And I think we're going to see, I hope the faith people come out, because that's what got the Vietnam War movement stopped, and also the civil rights, is when moral integrity comes. And the only person that's really come out and is being hit hard is Bishop bud of the Episcopalian diocese.
Estella?
You're muted.
Am I unmuted?
You're okay
Not
now.
yet.
Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. All right. Well, I think you have to join coalitions. And, you know, if you're not in an organization already, join it individually. Be part of it. Be part of the progressive movement, you know. And then I would say, you know, the organizing base, okay, is what pushes the elected officials, okay? And so what you have to do is be part of that progressive movement. And that then is the base for pushing those elected officials to do something, okay? So in other words, you got to go organize the people who are involved in those various issues, whatever issue that is. I wanted to also include that artists could be part of this movement. And just like what Joy Barrios was talking about, you know, this was theater. This was a theater group, and she learned through the theater group. I mean, if you're an artist, maybe there should be an artist collective, progressive artist collective, or something like that against Trump or whatever, you know, ways in which that's natural for you rather than outside your realm, you know, because, you know, everything is not wasted. Any kind of human effort is not wasted. And if it's going towards a progressive direction, then, you know, that's what builds the base. And that's what gets elected officials to pay attention. Oh, we didn't talk about how do we stay in the movement.
Well, maybe we could, yeah, go ahead and answer that maybe, and then hopefully Joy can pick up on that as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I think people have to pace themselves, and people have to. The thing is that when we were activists, we were really crazy. We didn't really take care of ourselves. And a lot of people burned out, you know, and some are even bitter, you know, and that has to do with the fact that you have to pace it, and you know, people who are organizing it have to learn to, you know, maybe make assignments based on people's natural abilities, or make assignments based on their schedules too, and kind of like, you know, make it flexible. I know when the KDP, everybody did everything, and we were just so exhausted. We're talking about 18-hour days, and I had 3 children. You know, I was raising 3 children, and no one was exempt, you know.
Wellness, wellness wasn't a mantra at the time.
No, not at all.
The KDP did organize childcare, so that activist parents could do their activism, and comrades would take care of their children. So part of almost everybody's assignment, but not everybody, was to be available like one night a month where you're going to take care of somebody's children. And that's how I took care of Cynthia's children. And you know, my claim to fame is that I was a babysitter for Rob Bonta. So, you know, I think that you have to, but we did that because we were an organization. And, you know, we had the same values and principles, one of which was to enable women to participate in the movement. And so that was something that was required in order for women to also continue to be mothers, as they're moving. But, we slept maybe 4 hours a night. We had multiple meetings a day, and people had their jobs, and then they went to a prep meeting, and then the real meeting, and then a summary meeting or whatever. And we totally burned ourselves. Well, actually, a lot of people didn't burn out. I mean, they're still active today. And one of the things that I'm working on now is I'm still on the board of the National Network for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and we're focusing our attention on the Texas-Mexico border and developing leadership among local organizations to be able to a network of organizations that fight back about the militarization at the border.
I think there's something we can also do at an individual level, and that is, if you know somebody, a lot of our communities are fearful right now. They're very fearful. They're burnt out. And what we have to do is say, don't be silent. Come with me. What I do is I take people who've never been in a demonstration or ever stood up for anything, I take them with me. And I say, see, it's okay. And I say, why don't you go talk to the city council people? If you don't tell me, don't vent to me. Go to your representative. But it's those little things, and I found that over the years, those people have been able to then go out on their own, and demonstrate and be activists in whatever part they're into. But a lot of us are also involved in different organizations at the same time, because us, immigrant rights is for one thing. The things that I'm working right now on is the detention here in Tacoma, Washington, watching people being detained and trying to speak, to witness that. And also, since I'm a retired federal employee, I really hurt for the people in the federal social service right now. And so I'm organizing on that group too, as well as the Seattle Grannies and also church. Because there's a lot of Filipinos in church. They can do all the stuff. They know what martial law is. And I'm trying to organize them along with, with the Cordovas who've been doing it for a long time in Seattle.
Thank you so much for that, Juanita. I just wanted to just note, of course, we're getting close to the end of our program. And we're not going to be able to, unfortunately, answer all of the questions, but we're going to save them. And I do hope to circle back to all of you from AKI to actually dive deeper with oral histories and in conversation with all of you. But I do want to pass this last question to Joy to also give her a chance to respond. But Joy, I know, of course, you kind of opened about talking about how you weren't a political prisoner, and you didn't necessarily directly kind of experience the kinds of violences that many of your contemporaries faced, but still you lived in the context of great fear, right? Because this was happening around you. Maybe to answer this last question about how do you manage that kind of fear and still continue to organize and stand up? Maybe you could share a little bit about maybe a piece of advice for people who might be feeling fearful as we see rising fascism in this country.
Um, Several things. Number one, always remember that you are not alone, even at the time of repression. You have the people you work with, your comrades. You have people who will stand with you. And as I always say, no one falls alone, right? So together we stand. And second, it's also important, I think, to constantly study popular cultural forms so that we can fight against state propaganda, so that we can get our message across to other people who probably seem unaffected, but maybe we just need to reach out to them and using forms or cultural forms maybe that they are familiar with so that they can listen to us. And third, I think to avoid burnout, it's always important to have a sense of humor because this is a long, long struggle. The struggle is always be long. Will always be long. So it's important to keep that sense of humor in what we do and to take care of each other. You know, like what has been mentioned, even babysitting or even sending um helping out. Well, in the Philippines, that's what we do. We help people out with health insurance, because activists obviously do not have health insurance. So it's that love and care because we take our inspiration from Tandansora of the 1896 revolution that keeps us going, knowing that we are together and we're in this for the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Sorry, I was trying to respond. I know that there's just so many questions here. We only have a few more minutes, but a couple of things again, as you see on the slide that is being shared, we have already a set of resources here that the panelists have shared. We will add more, put together a more exhaustive list of resources. Also, adding kind of offering resources on topics or organizations that our panelists mentioned. So look out for that. If you registered for the webinar, you'll get this. Uh, Specifically for AKI, we are trying to hold space for more educational work. I think one theme that I saw with all the panelists, I suppose I pay attention to this as a former university professor, but the importance of education, political education. We really want to support that. We know that social media is imperfect, very imperfect place to learn. But these kinds of excited conversations and reading together and learning that way can be important. We're very, very proud to be hosting an in-person discussion with Dr. Janelle Hope, who is a co-author of the Black Anti-Fascist Tradition, wanting to be able to share space from different perspectives around anti-fascist work. So that's going to be coming up in April. If we can maybe go to the next slide, where there are other meetings, the speakers also talk about being organized. And FONS, for those who are unfamiliar with FONS stands for the Filipino American National Historical Society. This is the San Francisco chapter. It's such an important organization nationally with various local chapters that really ensure that our histories are preserved, our histories are told. I think one of the themes that also came up is the ways in which fascists try to change a story. Joy talked about that. Certainly, Donald Trump is trying to change the story, revise history, erase history, and in the attacks on ethnic studies, earlier attacks on what he calls CRT. So please, attend FONS meeting in your area. The one in San Francisco, there's a meeting on the 15th. So this Saturday from 2 to 4 at the San Francisco Public Library. We can move on. We're just at the hour. So actually, I think we can keep going. This is actually really, really important. We want to be able to encourage folks to please donate towards support this GoFundMe campaign for Luisa Blue. Luisa Blue is another phenomenal Pinay, Filipina, who has made such tremendous contributions to the labor movement. She is really needing our support right now, is facing really major health challenges. So please support her. We're hoping through AKI to also tell Luisa Blue's story. Another theme that came up in today's webinar is the importance of really understanding that we're not just dealing with sort of white supremacy, fascism, we're also dealing with a capitalist system and an imperial, and kind of U.S. imperialism, but really kind of the importance of understanding the importance of organizing workers and a thriving labor movement in a society like this. And Luisa has done a lot in terms of advancing workers' rights for all workers, including Filipinos. I think we can keep going with slides. Where else are we? Are we at the last slide? I think maybe in the over in San Francisco for the watch party. I think they're going to be dancing. So maybe you could share that. Um, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Angelica, to share what's going on over there. But again, thank you so much to the panelists for joining us today. Thank you so much, everybody who's joining in person, people who are on virtually. Really hoping that we can continue these conversations. I hope you've left inspired with lots of tools in your toolkit. Oh, Joy, I think you had something to say.
Yes, I just want, in case there people who are watching, we do have online Filipino Tagalog or Filipino/Tagalog classes at UC Berkeley. If you would like to learn more about speaking the language, I teach with Chat Aban and Karen Liagas, Filipino Online. And also, we have a study abroad program every June in case you'd like to go with us to the Philippines to study Philippines narratives of tradition and resistance.
Salamat, Ate Joy. So, we really hope that you're inspired, but also you will take what you've learned today and share it with others. This won't be the only time we're going to be doing this, but we do want to end with a dance with all of you. So we invite all of you to get up wherever you are, and or you could just move your upper body, but we wanted to share with you this video, 1 Billion Rising. It's a global movement that uses dance and collective action to raise awareness and end violence against women, with the core message that 1 in 3 women will be beaten or raped in their lifetime, which equates to about 1 billion women. The campaign, which launched on Valentine's Day in 2012, is a call to action based on the statistics that 1 in 3 women on the planet will be bitten or raped during her lifetime. The dance movement encourages people to rise and dance in solidarity, expressing joy and community, and celebrating the fact that survivors have not been defeated by violence and that we're all standing with them. 1 Billion Rising is the largest mass action to end violence against women and girls in human history, which the event is held in over 190 countries. So we wanted to end this to with this collective dance with you. We join all of you to join us. You don't have to be an expert. I always mess up on the dance too, but we're gonna start with the video and you could dance along with us with the folks here at the Bayanihan Community Center. Thank you.
Wait ko yan, hindi nakakonect.
Huh?
Kuya, yung audio, hindi nakakonect.
Are we all going to
Alright,
join
we
them?
will connect the audio.
They're muted.
Yeah, you guys are muted in SOMCAN, but we can see you setting up the dance.
Oh, but
Excited to watch
they're going to
you.
be unmuted, right?
I
Yes,
hope
we're just
so.
fixing the audio.
Oh.
Can't hear it on our end, but hopefully you're all able to hear it where you are.
I can't hear it.
No,
Yeah, we
There's
can
no
hear
sound.
it.
nope. No sound.
Oh,
Thank you, everybody who's lingered on. And actually, I didn't even get to just acknowledge that looking through the list of attendees, my goodness, we had a lot of really powerful Filipina powerhouses joining us across generations. So thank you all for attending. We need multiple forums where we can bring so many stories to the table. Looks like we've got the tech going. Maybe. Now we hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear it now.
Bakit nga ba di mabubuhay ang bayan kung walang kababaihan? Ngunit kung tayo'y saktan parang walang hanggan. Bakit nga ba nakaguhit sa ating mukha na tayong lahat ay biktima? Nagalupitan, karahasan, pilit tayong dinadapa. Isang bilyong babae ang babangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, at tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat galaw, buong kataway sumisigaw. Bangon, babae, bangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Isang bilyong babae ang babangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Bangon, bangon. No one can put us down, no one can hurt us now. Rise up and fight, rise up from the ground. Bangon, bangon. No one can put us down, no one can hurt us now. Rise up and fight, rise up from the ground. Itigil ng panggagahasa, huwag matakot at lumaban na. Tama na ang pang-aabuso, tumayo tayo, kaya natin ito. Bilyong babae ang babangon. Tayo ang Gabriela ng ating panahon. Bangon, babae, bangon. Ito na ang ating panahon. Itaas ang kamay, at tayo'y lalaban ng sabay-sabay. Bawat tindak, bawat galaw, buong kataway
Thank you so much. And I think with that, we end our program. Thank you so much again to SOMCAN, Angelica Cabande. This is really um, her vision, and we're just so happy to have been able to support this vision and to work alongside her and SOMCAN. Again, for everybody who's registered, we will follow up with resources. Thanks so much to our panelists. You give us so much inspiration. We have so many lessons to learn from you, and can't wait to continue to share your stories. So good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.